thank you. As I travel around a lot, I meet a lot of young people, and I'm going to have a pretty wide category of young people, 40 and less. That encompasses a lot of people. And it strikes me that, and it concerns me, that so many people think that the way we live right now in our 20th century in a highly developed techno-glitzy culture is actually normal, a normal existence. You know, we all tend to be myopic in a certain way. You know, we all think that our reality is the reality. I mean, this is the way it is. We've always had supermarkets. We've always had, you know, squeezable Velveeta cheese. You know, we've always had M&Ms on demand. You know, we've always had supermarkets full of stuff from around the world at any time of the year. And the fact is, this is not the case. And so, you know, I'm very concerned about a generation that thinks generally that somehow we're going to be able to sail off into some Star Trek, you know, fantasy, cosmic nirvana world, and extricate ourselves once and for all from this humdrum attachment to an ecological umbilical. As if this is something to be spurned, something to be despised. You know, work, you know, get calluses, have splinters. Oh, you know, send me to the, you know, the Dilbert cubicle at the end of an expressway. And the problem is that the people there, when they hit about 45, they start looking around saying, you know, is this all there is to life? And so, I began realizing just how abnormal this is. And so I wanted to write a book, Folks, This Ain't Normal, expressing just how abnormal things are today. And of course, you know, the first chapter starts with, you know, we're the first civilization in history that has ever tried to raise children with no chores. You know, if the only thing you have to do in your life is to sit in front of a screen and move your thumbs around, not only is it physically depriving, you know, you get all these little, you know, anemic ET-looking people running around. You know, where's the muscles? You know, we run an internship program at our farm, you know, and it takes about a month. And every one that comes, you know, the fat ones lose 30 pounds, the thin ones gain 30 pounds, and nobody changes waist size. You know, they turn into a physique. You know, we ought to call it a, you know, the buff farm or something, you know, where everybody gets buff. But you know, we're the first generation that's raised these children with no chores, and when everything that you do is at your fingertips, it makes an incredibly unrealistic view of everything. I mean, you know, if you're driving your car, you know, in your video game, right, and it wrecks, well, you stop and you wait about 10 seconds, and the machine gives you a new car, right? And you get in it and you drive. Well, what happens when you're 17 and you're driving on the road like you drive on your fantasy thing and you wrap your car around a tree? Do you walk away and wait 10 minutes and life gives you another car? No. Yeah. You know, when you're battling the bad guys, you know, in this galactic video game, and your guy dies, and you wait 10 seconds, you know, and the machine gives you a new guy. Well, life isn't that way, you know. When Aunt Mary dies, she's gone. And when the tomato dies in the garden, it's gone. And that's why I'm such a big believer in children's chores, to viscerally participate in the foundations of life. Because this is what gives us, this is what brings us to the world in humility. Because when you think the world is just at your fingertips, and any mistake you make, any accident, any problem, you just wait 10 minutes and the world fixes it, that's not reality. But when you go out there and you take this tomato and you prepare the soil, that means you actually get, you know, grounded, okay? You prepare the soil, you put the plant in the soil, and you pull it up around there and you water it, and you go out every day and you watch it. And it's not only is it a wonderfully nurturing thing that helps you to realize, you know, this is a much larger universe than me. And it doesn't just center around me and my hedonistic desires. There's a lot more going on here. Why? How does this plant, earthworms and azotobacter and gibberellins and mycorrhizae, and the roots go out, and how does stuff come up? Where's the pump? The stuff comes up the stem, and pretty soon blossoms come out, and then you see little tomatoes and bees and bumblebees, and they're fertilizing, and then the tomatoes come out, and pretty soon you get to bite into this wonderful, soft, juicy, succulent tomato that is an extension of your nurturing hand. And that's a profound, powerful way to grow up with this idea that we can actually come to creation as a masseuse, see. And we can stroke, we can appreciate, we can embrace, we can dance with this amazing choreography that's going out in this existence of amazing beings in the soil, in our intestines, all around us. There's an amazing world here. MIT has released a thing that says essentially humans are only 15% human. We're 85% non-human. If we could take a camera and take a picture of the aura around each of us, the air would be full of bacteria and little viruses and protozoa and all sorts of things. We'd all look like Pigpen in the Peanuts comic strips. My bugs are intersecting your bugs, and your bugs are intersecting your bugs, and these bugs are all talking. Stanford University now has isolated that there's a language that all these bugs talk about, all these bacteria, and they actually talk. So when we eat things that you can't pronounce, that's a foreign language, a foreign substance. So when it goes down there, we swallow it into this 3 trillion member community of beings in our inside. They have to conduct a summit meeting to decide what to do with that unpronounceable stuff. This is they got to have their own alien policy or whatever. See, we've never done this before. We've never had the chemistry in the past to be able to make food that won't rot. If food won't rot, it won't digest. One of the most amazing places I was recently was in California at a farm-to-school program where 2 ladies are running a farm for a middle school complex. The students come out. So the first time they come out, they take the students out to the vermicomposting bin. It's like a 3-foot wide, 8-foot long box. It looks like a big coffin, and they open the lid, and it's teeming with red wigglers and all these worms in there. So they have the kids bring food. So the kids bring Cheerios and Pop-Tarts and Twizzlers and M&Ms and white Wonder Bread, whatever, and they bury it over here. They bury it, they dig it in there and they bury it down there amongst the worms. They cover it all up. The 2 farm gals, they bring an apple and a banana and some fresh ground meat and some homemade, home-ground, whole-baked wheat bread, okay? And they dig the hole and they bury all that in there. 2 weeks later, when the kids come back, of course, the kids have all been prepped for this, and they run up to the vermicomposting, they open up the box, and they go over here and they look in, and they pull out the Twizzlers, they pull out the Pop-Tart, they pull out the Cheerios, they pull out, M&Ms, all this stuff. They pull all this stuff out, set it out here. The white Wonder Bread still, in a nice white ball, they put it out here. They go over here, and they dig through here. Nothing there. And, of course, the obvious question is, well, why would you want to eat something worms won't even eat? See, we are so clever as humans. We are so clever, we can invent and create things that we can't physically, emotionally, materially, or physically metabolize. My dad used to call this overrunning our headlights. We're pretty clever. And so it's important that we have some values, some appreciation of nature's patterns. Because in our time of techno-glitzy civilized existence, we're actually creating things that haven't been around before. In our culture now, we've exchanged a 90% infectious disease rate to a 99% non-infectious disease rate So we've squandered all of this, the stainless steel, the electricity, the indoor plumbing, and all those things that saved us from these diseases, from these infectious diseases that were in the 1900 that were the killers, from a lack of sanitation and all that. And, it was one thing to take a bath once a month on the farm. It was another thing to take a bath once a month when you moved to the city. So that was, that was what we did. But now we've taken that and we've moved it all the way to where now we have concentrated animal feeding operations. And we're eating food that won't rot. TV dinners, Velveeta cheese and unpronounceables. Have you ever tried to make MSG or high fructose corn syrup in your kitchen? And this has been made possible by this incredibly kind of abnormal umbrella of cheap energy and cheap transportation. See, in the past, if I wanted to go from point A to point B, I didn't just jump in the car and pump gas in it, and head off downtown. If I wanted to go, to town, I had to go out to the stable, get the horse that I had fed and watered, all right, and saddle him up and get on this horse and ride into town. Well, it was completely impossible in such a day for 30% of all food to be eaten in automobiles. Not only did they not exist, but it was just, hard to eat your hamburger from Burger King, on your horse, and where do you put the milkshake? I guess they just weren't clever enough to figure out how to put, meal consoles on the horse saddle. If they could have, they'd have had Burger King sooner. But this is an amazing time that we've come to, that we've got this cheap energy. The same thing was true on the farm, okay? Grain was always expensive. That's why grain has been the holy grail of agriculture, was because until very, very recently, grain was always too expensive. Think about it. To produce grain requires tillage, because grain is an annual, not a perennial. And so to produce an annual requires tillage. Well, if tillage requires all day with a sharp stick walking behind a mule or an ox or a horse or a yak, okay, all day, all right, you got it? With a sharp stick. At the end of the day, we might have a little, tenth of an acre tilled up. Then we get to go out and we get to hand sow the barley or the rye or the wheat, right? You get to hand sow it. And then it sprouts, and then we've got to go out with a crude hoe and try to keep all the weeds out of it so that the grain can grow. And the grain finally grows up here. And now we get to go out with a scythe or a sickle, and we get to cut it down, right? We get to cut it down, and then we put it up in a sheave, all right? And it sits there for a couple of weeks while we get everything done, and it dries and gets damp in the dew, and dries in the sun and gets damp in the dew. And that cycle of damping and drying actually stimulates a very gentle fermentation in the seed heads, which release enzymes that allow us to digest it. One of the problems we have today with gluten intolerance and celiac disease is because now we come in with a combine, we harvest it 2 hours later, it's in a natural gas drying bin, and there's no enzymatic gentle fermentation process during this waiting period of being in the sheave to dry down. Anyway, so we got it in the sheaves now. Then we get to come in, we get to collect them, and we go over here and we've built a floor, a threshing floor. Maybe it's some planks laid on the ground. Maybe it's just hard packed clay. Maybe it's a simple kind of a lime, concrete base. But anyway, it's a hard floor. We put all that grain on there, and we run the ox over it, or we beat it, we flail it with sticks. Or maybe we bring all the kindergartners in the area, and have them run over it. But the point is, we've got to shatter it, flail it, break it up to break away the seeds away from the husk. Then we take this with a very crude, wooden fork of some sort, and we go to a breezeway and we fling it up in the breezeway. The wind comes and blows the chaff, the light chaff over here, and the heavy grain falls to the bottom of the threshing floor. And at the end of the day, we've got some grain, and we're going to go and we're going to kind of get it contained here. Now, we've got to keep this till next year in a day before sheet metal and wire mesh. Well, where are we going to keep it? Away from the mice and the rats for a year in a time before sheet metal and Butler grain bins and silos and concrete. Clay pots. So we make great big clay pots. And if you read the recent book, 1493, he talks about the biggest garrisons in the world were these garrisons of soldiers in cultures that guarded the clay pots full of grain. This was more valuable than gold because it was food. And I mean, you get hungry at the end of the day, gold doesn't get you food. And so we've got these big clay pots. And there's not enough. It's too laborious to have enough left over to feed omnivores, to feed animals. We need it all for us, for baking bread and for flour, for human consumption. And so expensive grain throughout the history of humankind has defined not only human diets and pushed human diets into animals. See, there's no culture in the world before 400 or 500 years ago that the basis of their diet wasn't animal-based. Why? Because animals are the only thing that's nutrient dense that doesn't require tillage. Herbivores especially. All the ancient diets were either based on seafood or herbivores, whether it was buffalo, yak, cow, lamb, alpaca, llama, guinea pig in Peru. Those are herbivores, all right? Why was it herbivore and seafood? Because those were the only two nutrient-dense foods that could be grown without tillage. Tillage destroys the soil. Perennials build the soil because the energy flows are different. And so diets tended toward herbivores and seafood because of the logistical difficulty of growing grain, which omnivores required and which people needed every little precious grain there possibly was. Now suddenly, with cheap fuel and great big plows, we've been able to eliminate that expense. Now, we've kidded ourselves because, in the U.S., no civilization has ever destroyed soil faster than the U.S. civilization. All right, none. And we've been able to produce this cheap grain, so suddenly grain is cheaper than anything else, and we're now feeding it to the animals, especially the herbivores, which were never supposed to eat grain. So now they can get acidosis and mutated E. coli, which kills us, and cast a long ecological shadow because this inherently ecologically damaging thing of tillage, and yes, soybeans require tillage, this ecologically damaging thing called tillage can now be done willy-nilly without thinking about perennials. See, as long as we were using draft power, all draft animals are herbivores. In 1910, the United States had 20 million mules, horses, and oxen for draft power. In fact, the number of domestic animals, the pounds of domestic animals in the U.S. today is the same as it was in 1910. It's just we don't have all the draft power. Okay? So the draft power created this wonderful time of pasturage, perennial pasturage necessary, that healed the soil between tillage cycles. Now, with chemical-based agriculture, those historically normal boundaries that protected us from our own ecological devastation and made it slower have now been, those hurdles have been jumped. So we don't have to adhere to any of those ecological P&L statements anymore, and we can damage it way, way faster by plowing everything and doubling the consumption of wheat in the last 40 years. And give our people celiac disease and gluten intolerance and all sorts of medical problems that the pharmaceutical companies can solve. See, that's what I'm talking about. We're so clever, we can overrun our headlights, and then we spend most of our waking hours trying to solve the problems that if we had adhered to the ecological pattern and the P&L statement that nature wants us, those patterns. You don't see herbivores in nature eating grain. You don't see them eating, dead cows. When the U.S. started taking farmers like me to free steak dinners for 30 years to teach us this new scientific, high-tech, progressive way to feed cows, where we take dead cows, we grind them up, we cook them, and we feed the dead cows back to cows. Our farm didn't buy it, not because we hated the U.S., although there's no love lost there, not because we were anti-science or anti-progressive or Luddites, but because we looked around the world and there was no template, there was no pattern that we could cut around in which herbivores eat carrion. So it was a fundamental philosophical decision to respect and honor the cowness of the cow, the herbivoreness of the herbivore, that said that's a boundary. In the movie Jurassic Park, you guys might be all too young to remember Jurassic Park, but there's of course this about this scientist, and he invents this way to clone raptors and dinosaurs and bring them back, and he's got this big fenced park, that he puts them in called Jurassic Park, and of course, then they get out of control, as you can imagine. They get away from him, they start tearing down the fences and eating the cars and destroying civilization as we know it. And the scientist, through all the mayhem, is euphoric, isn't he, about, oh, look what I've done. He's exulting in his great, demonstration of his creativity. And the journalist, who's of course the protagonist in the thing, he gets in his face, he says, but sir, just because we can, should we? That is a pregnant question, a profound question, and it's one that we need to ask all the time. Just because we can ship organic certified flowers from Lima, Peru in air freight refrigeration to San Francisco boutiques so we can go and buy organic shipped flowers from Lima, Peru overnight, should we? See, there are lots of things out here that we have created and built and done that are an absolute assault on nature's P&L statement, on this ecological womb in which we're all nested, whether we want to be or not. And so, what this cheap grain did was that it allowed us, for the first time, to have a semblance of abundance in which now we could feed omnivores even, as well as herbivores. So we took the herbivores off of the pasture, put them in feedlots. We took the omnivores, poultry and pigs, who heretofore had always been recyclers. The pigs were always kind of around the edges of the woods. They were eating, acorns and fallen mast and whey left over from cheese-making operations, things like that. They were basically scavengers. And the chickens, of course, were always right up against kitchens, because that's where you put your kitchen scraps, because you didn't have grain to feed chickens. Chickens, they're omnivores, so they need high protein, so they were always hooked up next to the kitchens. Today, this cheap grain and using petroleum, stored energy from long time ago, fossil fuel, we've been able to sever all of these historical connections and links that created an integrated food system. And for the first time in human history, we've been able to create a profoundly segregated food system. See, you couldn't have a concentrated animal feeding operation when motive power was a horse or a draft power, because you couldn't concentrate that many animals in one place to bring all the stuff in and haul all the manure out. It was logistically, you couldn't cover that much ground. When the industry shows the picture of the Tyson chicken house and says, look how efficient this is, what they're not showing are the square miles of grain, subsidized grain, and the soil washing down the Mississippi to create a dead zone the size of New Jersey in the Gulf of Mexico before the BP oil spill. What they're not showing is the massive amount of land necessary and the transportation and the energy and the floating barrels of oil that this floats on to amass the amount of material to bring it into the house to feed the animals, and then the same material to take the manure and out here. And so what we're doing now is we are segregating. So we're growing the grain over here, we're trucking it over here to feed the animals over here, to take the manure over here, to where now the manure, which is supposed to be an integrated carbon cycle of solar energy into biomass, into eating and decomposition on site to produce the earthworms and the mycorrhizae and to feed the soil on site, a short carbon cycle. You know, nature doesn't move carbon very far. You know, about the farthest nature moves carbon is, you know, an herbivore eats here and goes up here to the top of the hill and poops. Or a bird eats here, flies over here, sits on a tree and poops. You know, the wind comes and blows a leaf, you know, from your neighbors over to your other neighbors. That's about as far as nature moves carbon. We are now moving carbon even in container loads of chicken feathers all around the world. So we have ultimately severed all of these close integral links that nature had, the carbon chain, the transparent food, the omnivorous, the omnivores, the integration of food and recycling through animals. You know, today we give Greenie Awards for for college institutions that decide to separate their compostable kitchen waste, put them in separate barrels so they can go on a diesel truck out 10 miles away to a composting facility, so the campus can re-import it as compost to put around their Bartlett pears and their rose bushes or nasturtium flowers or whatever. And historically, when transportation was expensive, you couldn't do that. What's really green would be for all these schools to build a chicken house next to the dining services. All the kitchen scraps go right into the chicken house. The chickens eat it, lay eggs. The eggs go right back into the dining services. Now suddenly, nothing goes on a diesel truck, nothing gets shipped either way. That's real green. But we've kidded ourselves into thinking that we can continue to segregate our food system. If every kitchen in America, if every kitchen had enough chickens to eat the kitchen scraps from that chicken, we wouldn't even have an egg industry in the U.S. You know? And if you're in a condominium in the middle of the city, get rid of the parakeet cage, get rid of the pet, get rid of the aquarium, and get 2 chickens. They're really lovable and they're functional. Yeah. Think of how we've treated, how we've developed lawns in this country. We've got 35 million acres of lawn. We've got 36 million acres feeding and housing recreational horses. That's 71 million acres of land in the U.S. That's enough, according to biointensive gardening expert John Jevons, to feed the entire country without a single farm. See, we have a fundamentally segregated system because we can. And what I'm suggesting is that as we move through, and I don't know how long it'll take, but the way to bet for the future is that nature's going to bat last. There's going to be a P&L statement, day of reckoning, whether it's disease, E. coli, Campylobacter, Listeria, C. diff, MRSA. I mean, all these diseases, nobody ever even heard of these. When I was growing up, we didn't even know how, never even heard of them. Today, everybody says them as if it's just common lingo. It's not common lingo. It happens when we so segregate and disrespect the chickenness of the chicken and the cowness of the cow. It happens that when we so abuse the P&L, nature's P&L statement, nature, these are all, these little Latin squiggly words, Campylobacter, Listeria, and E. coli. These are all Latin words that are nature's language screaming us today, begging us, enough. But Wall Street still runs around in little conquistador uniforms. They don't have the funny hats and the little tights and the little bloomers, and all that. But they wear pinstripe suits and pastels, and they sit behind big boardrooms, and they make decisions that profoundly affect the earthworms 2,000 miles away. And so we have now ultimately segregated our entire worldview, our entire dependency cycle in the whole food system. Finally, I would say we have segregated ourselves even away from a visceral relationship and participation with food, with our culinary ignorance. I am amazed today at the profound culinary ignorance in our culture. I mean, I'll be very sexist for a minute. 40 years ago when we started selling chickens, all of our customers are women. We don't have any men customers. Men just, look in the refrigerator, they just grunt and say, honey, I can't find it, So all of our customers are women. And 40 years ago, all of our customers knew how to cut up a chicken. I mean, you couldn't go to a supermarket and get boneless, skinless breast. If you wanted a recipe that had that, you had to get a whole chicken. You went and you carved it out, and you kept the others. You cooked it for stock, and you kept that for for broth. Okay, this is the way it was done. Today, half of our customers don't even know a chicken has bones. They think that these, boneless, skinless breasts just kind of, we go out and harvest them. We're picking them like strawberries or something. This is profound. I had a lady ask me the other day. She said, "How do you make a hamburger?" I said, "What? Come again? How do you make a hamburger?" I said, "You kidding me?" She said, "No." This is an educated, 45-year-old gal, she says, well, my husband and I have been vegetarians for 15 years, and now we've realized the best, most efficacious way to save the planet is with pasture-based livestock. We've had to, try to make up for lost time. He wants a hamburger. I don't know how to make one. I wish that we could have pronounceable food, that we could have nutrient-dense food, that we could have food without E. coli and without all these things. I wish we could snap our fingers today and have it without anybody having to do anything. Wouldn't that be nice? But where we are is a physical manifestation of the billions of decisions that we've been making up until today. And where we are in 20 years will be a physical manifestation of the decisions that we're going to make between now and then. And so ultimately, our weakness, our weak link, is not money, it's not resource, it's not soil, it's not knowledge. It's participation. And so that's why I promote domestic culinary arts. It's time to get in the kitchen. It's time to get our children in the garden. When I talked about that tomato at the beginning and biting into that wonderful backyard grown succulent, juicy tomato, what a different experience that is than going down to the supermarket and getting a tomato that has been bred and selected over time to be able to withstand 1,500 miles of transportation between California and Vermont. That's not an eating experience. Nobody in history has ever selected for that kind of transportation. And so ultimately, we have to take responsibility. There's no them and those guys. There's just us. That's who it is. And so we need to appreciate that one of the best things that we can do is get in our kitchen and just eliminate the patronage to Archer Daniels Midland and Cargill and Tyson and all the junk that's out there, because everywhere in this country there are hundreds of struggling, food integrity, earthworm dancing farmers. Okay? And we need to funnel, we need to patronize them. And you know what the beautiful thing is? That doesn't take an act of Congress. It doesn't take an agency. It doesn't take a tax concession, a grant. We can do that every day, healing the planet one bite at a time. And we can restore normalcy, because ultimately our world will be only as normal as my life. We all tend to want to sit around and point, if those people right there would just do the right thing, everything would be fine. But I find that when you start down that road, it finally comes around to say, well, what am I doing? And that's hard to look in the mirror, and say, well, what am I doing? But if there's an old Chinese proverb that says, if each of us would sweep in front of our own house, the whole world would be clean. My dad used to say, you can't push on a string. You have to pull. You have to lead by example. And so as we each bring normalcy to our lives, it will radiate out a sphere of influence. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. It will radiate out a sphere of influence to the people that we know. And we will touch them profoundly with a new restored integrity in life, living, and normalcy. Are we up to the task? Yeah. Good. All right, let's do it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, so we do have time for about 3 or 4 questions. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand to get the microphone.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming. My question is, I feel very proud to be from Vermont because we have a very big localvore movement. And it's so easy. Like, we have a backyard garden. It's so easy to go to farmers markets. But what do you suggest? I live in Vermont. In February, I'd have to eat moose and twigs if I was still to be a localvore.
Okay. All right. Vermont. Let's deal with Vermont. I mean, we're here. Okay. Very, very quickly, 4 northern latitudes. Listen, if all the money and fossil fuel right now spent to cart unseasonable produce, which is 95% water, from warm climates to cold climates, were today converted to plastic and thermal film for tall tunnels, season extensions, and cold frames, and solariums on the sides of houses, Vermont would be able to grow all of its lettuce, mesclun mix, broccolis, cold crops in the middle of winter, and we wouldn't have to build the roads and we wouldn't have to run the trucks. See, the truth is that we're not lazy. The tragedy of our lives is we're not lazy. Most people aren't lazy. We got things to do. We've got interests, right? Okay, we're not lazy. The problem is that we're busy doing the wrong things. See? And so, the answer to northern climates is not dependency on 2,000 mile away fresh watery produce. The answer is to take the technology. See, that's the point of this book, is that when I say restore normalcy, I don't mean going back to hoop skirts, Dutch ovens, and Ringer washing machines, okay? Today, we have the most amazing technology, but we squander our efforts in continued industrial scale things without realizing, it's unconscionable immorality, in my opinion, for houses and buildings here to not have a southern solarium on them. If you put a southern solarium, we have the technology to do that. It's easy. You just put a plastic film on the side. Now you heat the building so you can cut off the winter heat, and you grow your own food in there, and you grow and you build buildings with living roofs on them. In China, they just built a 250,000 person city growing as much food on the apartment tops as they did on the agricultural land that they built the 250,000 person city on. You fly over aerial view, you can't even tell it's a city. You know, there's cucumbers and squash and stuff piling out, and they collect all the water off the roofs and pump it back up on the top. You can hook that up to your exercise bike or your wellness center room. You know, you're pumping water back up to the top. Now you don't have to deal with a sewer system or tunnels of pipes. See, this is an integrated approach. And even the best green solutions we have tend to be segregated approaches. The other thing that we do in Vermont is that we take all of those extra tomatoes. You know, at the end of the season, the tomatoes talk to each other. Hey, you hear there's a frost coming? You know, they listen to the Weather Channel. And the tomato plants, those of you who grow tomatoes, you know what I'm talking about? A week before frost, don't they? They just, but the problem is, everybody's tired of tomatoes at that point. Now they're wanting winter squash and they're, you know, sweet potatoes and all, right? And so trust me, the locavore farmers in Vermont, trust me, they throw away enough tomatoes to feed half the state the week before frost every fall. When's the last time you went to farmer's market and heard somebody say, hey, listen, I know it's about the end of the season. I'm sure you've got some blemished, you know, slightly blemished tomatoes. Could you bring 3 bushels for me next week to farmer's market? Our family's going to get together and we're going to make fruit leather. We're going to can it. We're going to make salsa and ketchup for the winter, okay? Tomato paste. We're going to make that next week in the kitchen. If you knock, 10% off, I'll take a bunch of blemished tomatoes. When's the last time you heard that? Never! You hear it all the time? Good. Well, you guys are the cream of the crop. Most of the people down there, they don't want any more than they can carry at one hand because they got Fifi on the other hand, and they want tomatoes in a little boutique baby jar, you know, with a little bow ribbon on it. You know, now we've patronized, we've given our guilt assuagement pittance to the local food movement. We need people that'll eat this stuff. You know, I get tired of going to, greeny things, environmental things, nature conservancy things with a bunch of, elder blue-haired country club people that send their $100 to nature conservancy and then take their grandkids to Happy Meals. Folks, we've got to integrate our life. We can't continue to live in a segregated way. Okay, another question. There's a couple here now.
I just wanted to ask a quick question about, do you see any hope?
Do I see any hope?
Do you see any hope in where we're going?
Well, I don't see any hope in the way we're going because I don't see any shift. I mean, Obama just installed this big Food Modernization Act that is just absolutely destroying the local food movement. And who did he put in charge of it? Michael Taylor, the former Monsanto attorney for 10 years who brought GMOs to the world. I mean, folks, I see we haven't changed direction yet. You'll know that we start changing direction when McDonald's starts going bankrupt and when Walmart starts going out of business, and that's when you'll know we've started changing directions. So, as long as they're still building, new things, we haven't changed direction. But I'm extremely hopeful about what you and I can do, because we've got electric fence, we've got polyethylene black plastic pipe, we've got drip irrigation, we've got all sorts of really cool, we've got plastic film, we've got all sorts of really cool stuff that Grandpa never even could have imagined. Stainless steel, indoor plumbing, electricity, little front end loaders, chippers, conveyors to handle biomass, so we can do large scale composting. Now we do composting with pigerators. You'll put pigs in and the pigs turn it up. So the point is, we have amazing technology today to do these things, unlike we've ever had in the past. So we can actually, like on our farm, the average cow days per acre in our county is 80 cow days per acre. Using this mob stocking herbivorous solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration, fertilization, we are averaging over 400 cow days per acre, 5 times the county average. We've never planted a seed, never bought a bag of chemical fertilizer in 50 years, okay? So these principles work. We know how to do this now. The weak link, again, is not money, it's not resources. The weak link is constipation of imagination. And so I'm very hopeful about what we can do. And that's why I tend to not get too politically active and things like that, because I don't think that's the answer. The answer is a bottom-up, grassroots, entrepreneurial, creative, bringing it, birthing, germinating brand new seedlings, brand new prototypes, brand new protocols to the culture. They'll never come from the top down because they're too linked into the fraternity of ideas. One more question and we're done. Is that right? Who's got, yeah.
So my question was just a simple one. What does P&L stand for?
P&L, profit and loss. Okay, profit and loss. We talk a lot about, business and industrial profit and loss, but we don't talk about ecological profit and loss. And there's no balance sheet for it. Have you ever filled out a balance sheet for, an ecological P&L statement for your, no. Okay, are we at time? Who's in charge? Are we at time, or do we want to take another question? 5 minutes, another question. Okay, yes. Oh, here we go. Get the microphone.
Thank you very much, first and foremost. So I just started on a biodynamic farm, and I was wondering how you felt about incorporating, it's fully integrated systems on a farm organism. How do you feel about incorporating spirituality into agricultural practices?
Well, that's a great question. We're in a chapel. It's Sunday morning, so I will... Some of you may know that one of my handles is that I'm a Christian, libertarian, environmentalist, capitalist lunatic. And the first part of that is Christian. And so I believe that we didn't put it here, that it was here, and this entire world is an object lesson of God's grace and abundance. And so what we're supposed to be doing, in fact, in 2 weeks I'll be speaking in San Antonio at the Vision Forum on Christian ecological ethics. And so what we're supposed to be doing is taking these great spiritual truths and looking at the landscape, at the physical, what we can see and touch, and saying, how do I use this as an object lesson? So, just as a couple of examples, we should be building forgiving farms. Well, what's a forgiving farm? A forgiving farm is one in which our animals and plants have an enhanced immune system. See, in the industry, at Tyson today, if an animal gets sick, they assume, apparently, it's pharmaceutically disadvantaged. When one of our animals gets sick, I immediately look inside me and say, what did I do with my management that allowed the problem to jump over the immunological barrier to create a terrain of disease? And I think we learn a lot more asking that question than, well, what can I reach? Because the one comes from inside. The one assumes the answers are here. The other assumes the answers are there. It's the difference between globalization and localization. This was the problem. This has been the problem with our agriculture for a long time. Fertility can't be grown on the farm. It has to come from elsewhere. So between 1840 and 1860, we took centuries of guano that had built up from the booby, the pelican, and the cormorant down off the coast of Peru, and in 20 years, despoiled the entire 150-foot deep strata of guano accumulated over centuries in 20 years, because fertility has to come from somewhere else. So a forgiving farm is one that builds resiliency within it. So we build a lot of ponds on our farm. Why? Because water is one of the most powerful healing and destructive forces in nature. So every time we get some money, we build another pond. Why? So we can keep the raindrops as close to where they fall as long as possible, because a raindrop that spends a lot of time going from where it fell down to the ocean gets to do a lot more things on its way. So by building ponds, we save our neighbors downstream from floods, and we save our neighbors downstream from droughts. See, the tragedy of our time was that the Shenandoah Valley, since the Europeans came, that was this beautiful savanna that the Native Americans had maintained with fire. Now we have chainsaws, so we don't have to use fire. Now we don't have to burn it. We can compost it. So that's a major development. That they maintained with the grass that you could tie above the knot in above the horse's saddle when Governor Spotswood sent the Knights of the Golden Horseshoe into the Shenandoah Valley to look at it. We inverted that. We plowed it all up to grow grain, the Holy Grail, and shipped all that soil down to the Chesapeake Bay and eliminated the clam population with turbidity from runoff from silt, when instead we could have taken all of that soil movement and built ponds up in the Blue Ridge and the Alleghenies around the valley, so that today, 150 years later, we could have used our European creativity and our Yankee ingenuity and our hard work and our equity, and we could have created a Shenandoah Valley that was drought-proof, flood-proof, and would have recreated Eden and be building in soil instead of destroying soil. See, the tragedy of our time is not that we're lazy. It's that we're busy about the wrong things. And so, how we do that, how we view the landscape and what it is, we are supposed to bring healing to that landscape. And so we actually believe that one of our mandates as humans is to extend this spiritual redemption that's been extended to us, extend it to the landscape, and massage that womb in which we're dependent and live, and actually make it convert more solar energy into decomposable biomass to be decayed, to build soil, to actually expand the planet with solar energy than it would in a static state. So we are not believers in in ecology by abandonment. We are ecology by involvement. We have so many radical environmentalists today that think the best thing that could happen for the planet is for all the people to just die tomorrow. I don't find that a very nice prospect. And so I ask you, why do I have this big grain? Why do I have an opposing thumb? What am I here for? I am here to involve myself in strategic disturbance and massage of this landscape that was here before me, created as an object lesson to glorify God, and I am here to leave it as a legacy for my children in a much more resilient, forgiving capacity than it was before I came, and I'm here to capture more solar, sun energy, S-U-N, not S-O-N, sun energy into biomass accumulation to feed this community of beings in the soil that ultimately feeds the community of beings in me, that allows me to magnify and bring glory to this abundant grace that we've all been given in this physical manifestation of plenty that the Creator wants us to enjoy. Thank you so much for letting me, and thanks for asking the question. Thanks for letting me visit with you today. And now, we are in a chapel and it is Sunday. Now may all of your carrots grow long and straight. May your radishes be large and not pithy. May the coyotes be struck blind at your pastured chickens. May all of your culinary experiments be delectably edible. May the rain fall gently on your fields, the wind be always at your back, your children rise up and call you blessed, and may we all leave the world a better place than we found it. Thank you so much for letting me visit with you. Thank you.